All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another London
Come
is
on.
Blue live. Or if you're watching this after the fact or listening to it afterwards, a little bit of a time travel moment for you as you are going back to the future, as it were. But look, Chelsea got it done. F the PGMOL, F Newcastle, take all 3 points at Stamford Bridge. Enzo Maresca, take the card, defending your team because you beat Newcastle 2 wins here after Panathinaikos and against Newcastle. Get the sweep done midweek, Nick. Get the double over Newcastle. You get a chance to potentially beat them 3 times this season. But look, we're going to get into a very interesting match for Chelsea. Some changes, again, to the starting lineup, some changes to the formation and the tactics where people are playing. But, I mean, do we have to start off as just praising Cole Palmer again for being the most absurd footballer on the planet, maybe at the moment?
I mean, from like the first second of this game, it was dummies and tricks and little touches around the corner. And then, you just look at him as a player and, not since Eden Hazard, and I'm not comparing the two, they're two different players, but like not since Eden Hazard have I felt like we've had a guy that is so confident in his own ability that he can lift the other players around him to match his level. And I think that is what you're seeing from him and from the rest of the team, is that they are lifting their level. Nico Jackson is lifting his level and converting more. I thought the wingers lifted their level for large parts of the game today. I thought, that Lavi and Caicedo lifted their level in the second half significantly, and so on and so forth. Cole Palmer is an extraordinary footballer, and Dan, this goes back to everything that we talked about preseason. It goes back to him having eyes in the back of his head to see that pass to Neto for the first goal is just it's mind blowing how good that pass is. It's a pass this season.
Look, there are some 3-word match reviews coming in on Twitter, in the chat, on YouTube, and then also through Discord. There's some like Common Sense FC with bald ref syndrome. There are many from ones like CFC Sean with Captain Reece James, definitely responding maybe to some criticism that he received in the middle of the week. With people like JB East with Chelsea, hold on, because we absolutely did not look convincing throughout the entirety of the match. And then Sam, who's just joined us here now as well, putting you on the spot maybe, just with what your 3-word match review is to sum up this performance.
Yeah, can I go 4 like last time and just say from Greece to Reese? Yeah, I think like those were the 2 talking points for me. Really, really good away performance. And then I expected him to be off by the 60-minute mark, but just came in, and that diving header at the end to save our bacon, just incredible. And you often miss that composure. It's sort of like one of the tangibles in the back line, just how completely unfluttered or he looks every time he's doing something on high pressure. So you need those kind of people in the back line. And again, I think on a different day we wouldn't have survived today, with Newcastle probably registering I think 2.5 xg, but guys like him make the difference. So definitely his day, and excellent performance. Couldn't have asked for more.
Nick, before I jump to yours, just a couple more. We had Derek with the King James's Castle. You had Jason with the James Saves Bob. I think that is very, very true there. And then you had Jay with the Pups Becoming Dogs. I think there was a little bit of that here in this one.
I like that one. I like that one a lot. Yeah, I went with Cole Conquers Castle. Little alliteration for our friends who enjoy that sort of thing. But look, I mean, it's his world. We're just living in it.
Yeah, I think it's just to F the haters, because there are a lot of haters who are just, unfortunately, the receipts are going to come due here for a lot of people. The receipts for people who are calling out Nico, the receipts for people potentially saying Pedro Neto might not have been a good signing for the dollars for the money. And look, there's a lot of people who have said things over the past summer, over the past couple of years, who are at this point going to have some really interesting come to Jesus moments with the reality of this situation, that Chelsea are continuing to find ways to win, even as difficult as it may be. And maybe we just kind of start from the top of it, right? We had a little bit of a change in who was playing and how we structure the back line, right? So Sanchez comes back in. We had Reece James at left back. We had Levi West coming back in off of his suspension. You have Malagusto at the right back position. Romeo Lavia getting an opportunity. Moises Caicedo getting the opportunity as the midfield duo. And then you had Neto on the left, Cole Palmer kind of in that central 10 position, Nana Madueke, and then Nico Jackson up top. And, I think, Sam, we talked about this in a little bit in the preview. We had talked about what was going to happen with that back line, who was going to be potentially rotated in. And, that was in absence of getting to see what the Panathinaikos lineup was. This was interesting just with the Reece James on the left and Malagusto on the right. It did feel as if on the day, the left-handed side of the attack and defense performed a little bit better than the right with Madueke and Gusto. What did you make of Maresca's decision on the balance and then how it played out?
Yeah, definitely. I sort of was expecting Gusto if Kukureya was benched to pop up on the left-hand side. But the major difference for me was that Reese wasn't asked to do anything in terms of underlapping or overlapping in possession. So a lot of the times when Sancho played, you needed a runner to make space for him. But Neto was so good on the left-hand side because he just received out wide. Most of the times he waited, got two players in. And there was one instance where he essentially waited for Livramento to come to him, then beat him, went to the byline, and sold him before trying to put in a cross on the far post. So I think the Sancho switch to Neto and also making sure that Reese was deeper, not making him run his socks off in the other direction was a good change because perhaps there was an anticipation knowing that Newcastle would come to do that at Stamford Bridge. They would wait for us to lose the ball, have one of our fullbacks stranded very high, and then try to pick us up on transitions. And Maresca said, no, that's not happening. We're going to have like three midfielders. Reese is going to be on the left hand side, Lavia slightly on the right hand side, and Caicedo even deeper. So you've got a 3-3-4 and a more stable out of possession structure, which I think really worked for us.
And then Nick, as you were kind of looking at it too, I mean, I think started, in a kind of interesting fashion. It was a little bit more back and forth. There was the first movement that was, I mean, was it offside by inches? Was it offside by centimeters? I don't know what unit of measurement, if we want to use imperial or metric, but boy, oh boy, that first goal that got ruled off, I mean, at least movement wise, showed you that the setup was right for the day. The way that we were going to attack Newcastle was right for the day. And I mean, that did prove out in the, first goal that we actually did score and was adjudicated to be a proper goal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we just started so rapid in this game. Like we clearly set the tempo of the game. We knew, we played Newcastle enough under Eddie Howe to know how they play. They like playing on the counter. They like, a physical game, and it certainly was a physical game. A lot of challenges going in, a lot of late tackles and, arms to the head that aren't called fouls and lots of fun stuff like that. But, I was just really impressed with the pace. And I think that was for me, when we talk about having these 2-11s, our Premier League 11 is able to start much more quickly than maybe we saw last year when everyone was super leggy and we didn't have the subs and all that sort of stuff. Like, I think Cole Palmer playing so advanced really took Newcastle by surprise that he wasn't in the hole as much to start. And he was actually at sometimes even higher than Jackson was when we were starting the match. Jackson would naturally kind of drop into that hole and receive the ball and then spray it out wide. And then we'd have a really nice attacking movement. I want Nico to see that pass and some other passes a little bit more quickly. That's my only complaint about him on the day, is that Cole made a few runs and I'm like, damn, you really need to see that and execute it more quickly, because I mean the run and Cole's finish, that little like just slid across shot that Pope has no chance of saving was wonderful. And I will say this, Sam, the first goal that counted is my favorite goal of the season, and it's going to be hard to top that because it was like vintage Barclays: pass through, pass across, goal. Everything done with exquisite precision. I was just so pleased to see that kind of goal.
And shout out to the preview pod. We pointed out Dan Burn versus Nico Jackson as like a point of contention, and Nico got the better of him for the first three instances. And even the offside goal, Nico was right there trying to make that opportunity. And again, just like you mentioned, exquisite. The weight of pass from Palmer. I mean, I know you sort of get surprised by the things he does, but to beat two players and to place it that well in the middle was just an incredible piece of skill. So
Look at his
fantastic.
body. Look at his body position when he plays that ball, Sam. He's almost like facing the corner flag when he kicks. Like
Hmm.
his leg is able to wrap around and hit that ball in a way that like no one would expect that. No one thinks that that's even possible physically to do that, and then for the
But
ball
Nick,
to be perfect is unbelievable, dude.
but that's exactly what throws Livramento off because his body is pointing to the corner flag, and Livramento thinks the ball is going out to the wings. So he actually makes a run
Mhm.
out wide to close the angle to Neto, and the ball instead goes through both defenders in behind. And you can see Livramento stumble a little bit, trying to figure out, I did not expect that pass to happen. And that's when Neto gets his break and he's able to use his speed to get to the second ball and just lays it on a plate for Nico Jackson. But incredible play from all three players in that sequence. And yeah, just the quality in attack is incredible. And I'm super happy for Pedro Neto. Like our first comment said today, lots of doubts about whether he was going to come good. I mean, he's a PL proven talent. Once he gets to, his peak fitness in a better team with more talented players, he's going to be an explosive asset. So really pleased for him, and long may that continue.
I
Mhm.
mean, when you look at Pedro Neto on the day, I mean, going up against former Chelsea Academy player Antino Livramento, I mean, he really made Livramento work for everything on the day. Like, it was not I don't think it was a fun assignment for Livramento in any way, shape, or form to have to go up against Neto. I mean, he had the 2 shots on target, 1 off target, the 2 blocked, hit the woodwork once that could have been a
Ugh.
goal there, which would have been exceptional. He ends up getting the assist off of Palmer's distribution to him, and the way he worked for that too, to stay up, to show the wherewithal, the acumen, the ability to navigate against the defender, to put himself in a position to then set up Nico in that moment. Really, really, I think exceptional stuff from Neto, and like deserving of the praise. And I think what I liked, Nick, was just because he was able to push Livermento so far back, because Nico Jackson was able to really absorb attention from Dan Burn, Cole actually got into more advantageous positions on that left-hand side. It gave him a lot of latitude to run. When you
Mhm.
look at the heat maps for where Palmer operated, even though he was in the 10 role, I mean, he was effectively really in that left-hand space for the majority of it. Like, it is bright, bright, bright red when you look at the heat map, when you look at the basically right in front of the left-hand side of the goal. Like, it is absolutely like burning up, like staring at the sun.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good performance, and look, I got to give credit to Livramento too. I thought he was pretty good on the day, and it's always weird to see Newcastle come to Stamford Bridge with two of our former academy players as their first team fullbacks, and then play pretty well. But yeah, I mean, I think you look at Neto, and there was clear, when I saw him on the starting lineup sheet, Sam, I was like, oh, okay, so this is going to be a pretty open game then. This is going to be something where, both teams are counterattacking. And, outside of I think there was probably 30 minutes where Chelsea had some very comfortable possession. It was that kind of game. It was super stretched. And I think in those sorts of games, we look at all the different configurations that Maresca can put forward, whether it's Neto on the left and Madueke on the right, which I would call kind of the speed lineup. Mudryk even maybe makes that lineup, and we saw him as a sub, obviously, or the more controlled possession sort of lineup where you get your Sancho's in and maybe a Madueke or Neto on the right, or maybe some sort of Palmer and Kunku situation, which we still haven't seen manifest this year. Like if you're a team who is coming to Stamford Bridge in particular, looking to understand how Chelsea are going to play, I think it's an incredibly confusing situation to understand who Maresca is going to start on those wings, because he is largely, I think, looking at the matchups and trying to figure out where to exploit an opposition. So I don't know, Sam, what you think about the configuration today.
Yeah, it's a good headache to have for him. I think you
Mhm.
Also have a nice sort of mix around of profiles that you can throw in. So Neto on the left wing functions very differently from how Sancho and Mudryk function. I would say Mudryk and Sancho are not alike at all either. They also have these micro skill sets that differ. So it's great to be able to have so many problem solvers in the side. And I don't think anybody in the Chelsea fan base is, debating about the quality we have in attack. I think it's just figuring out if we can get those configurations right in midfield and maybe have a little bit more gelling to do in defense because we did have some shaky moments. The West Fofana header back almost put me in the hospital with heart palpitations. But yeah, it's and obviously Rob Sanchez just loves giving my cardiologist a job. So yeah, I mean, I would live longer without him. Like just somebody saying Sanchez needed a coffee. He needed an espresso, like a double espresso shot, like punctured into his veins. That's what he needed,
The
genuinely.
thing was,
But
he went with the song that instead of the actual beverage, and that didn't work out well for him. So things to consider and keep in mind. I mean, this is only the second Premier League win at home this season out of the 5 matches we've played now. So I mean, that's I think another like gritty, had to grind it out, wasn't perfect. I mean, I think we can kind of talk a little bit more about the defense here, Nick, and I think Sanchez, but I mean, that alone is something to celebrate and be excited about. I mean, we had the 1-1 draw against Forest, we had the 1-1 draw against Palace, we had the 2-0 loss to City, and then we had the 4-2 win against Brighton. So not keeping clean sheets at home, bad. Not keeping clean sheets in general, also bad. Winning at home, though, always good for the supporters, for the players to build momentum here. And particularly with another Newcastle match midweek, a United match against 14th place Man United coming up on the weekend. Like, definitely need that momentum, definitely need that positivity. And this definitely gives us a bit of a shot in the arm of it.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Look, was this a perfect performance? Absolutely not. Did we make it really hard on ourselves at the end by not controlling the ball and giving Newcastle multiple set piece opportunities? Of course we did. Were there some, tired legs out there because the pace of the game was pretty intense? Yes. Closing the deal today is so important for this team. Look, this is a Newcastle team that's probably going to be in and around the top 6 at the end of the season. Maybe they won't be, but I think they will be. I think they're better. I think they're better than Spurs. Still, I do. And look, Manchester United, another team that is very beatable, that we have to beat, that we have to win that match. Like, getting this done, this team developing winning behaviors, right? Tense situation. Reece James comes in, makes 3 critical blocks today, and puts a certain dangerous ball over the bar for a set piece at the end. That sort of closing mentality, especially at home, where you have to win. You have to win at home to get top 4. You have to win 75% of your matches at home and split on the road to get enough points, roughly 72, to get top 4. Like, these are the things that really matter. Some of it's just a math problem. If you don't win at home, you put extra pressure on yourself to go win on the road, which is much more difficult to do in many circumstances. So I am, Sam, I am really excited about this performance and this victory, because I think we needed to be in a real fight. I think we needed to prove to ourselves that we can win these really scrappy matches. And this is a very good thing for this team, that they got hit in the mouth a little bit, but they came out and they were still ready to go.
I completely agree with you. And I want to thank both of you guys because when you started the preview pods, what I've been doing is I've been watching a lot of other teams more than I usually do. And when I was watching Manchester City, they're doing the exact same thing. When I was watching them against Southampton, I was like, fifth minute goal for Erling Haaland. Usually you expect them to go 5 or 6-0 at the end of the game. They barely came back with just the one. And this early on in the season, when you've got a new manager, then you've got so many swirling parables and things that can sort of change from second to second, from game to game. Winning dirty is fine. Nobody's going to question any of your decisions. Notice how no journalist has talked about the feud between Boli and Iqbali in this run because we're winning. And the moment we start losing 2 or 3 in a row, that sort of comes back again. This is how it works. So, like you mentioned, the best thing to do is now grind out the results no matter how they come. Panathinaikos was the beauty, this was the beast, and hopefully you can mix it all together and sort of, put a good run together and try to build the foundation for a top four finish because we desperately need that for multiple reasons.
I mean, Dan, how much have we talked about this upcoming run of fixtures that we have, right? That we're entering, and now we're fully entered into what I would look at for the whole season as like the gauntlet portion. You basically get from now until mid-December, where there are a string of really difficult matches against the rest of quote unquote the good teams in the league, and that's Manchester United lumped in there very pleasantly right now. But we've talked about this, that this run of fixtures will tell us a lot about who this team is, right? United, Arsenal, Villa, Tottenham, moving down the list, City coming up. Like, these are all sorts of matches where we get to test ourselves. This young team, these puppies turning into dogs, as the 3-word match review was earlier. Are we capable of consistent performances in these games, no matter the opposition? And that is, for me, when we get through Villa, that's going to be a big thing to look at. It's, what is this team? Did they fight every match and maybe didn't quite get it done, but we're more than in it and we're more than ready? Or did we kind of flail? And so far, 2 games in, definitely fought against Liverpool. Could have easily had a result there. Definitely fought against Newcastle. I like what I'm seeing at the start of this run.
Yeah, and you're gaining confidence that the manager is understanding about how to deploy the personnel appropriately, that he is finding a way
a little nervy for me personally, but okay.
Finding a way to challenge the players to get the best result. I want to talk about the Reece James kind of performance and what he did on the day. You talk about deploying players. I think we can chat a little bit about, Lavia getting the nod here over someone like Enzo and getting an opportunity to, really find value kind of out of possession in the way that he challenged there. I think those are 2 things that are interesting. And then I don't think there's a good solution from like a goalkeeping perspective, which is going to keep us very, very, very much questioning the decision about who we purchased as a backup replacement and what that does and how that makes life a little bit more difficult. If we talk about this is a fine margin type of game, particularly when, the officiating shenanigans make life a little bit more difficult. Someone in the chat just celebrated an Andre Santos goal. Could have used it Andre Santos at moments across this season so far. Sam, I think to that though, I think Reece James responded extremely well to the call out from Enzo Maresca in the I need to see more. I need to see leadership, that leadership has to come across in multiple ways. And I think it was kind of targeted a little bit at the dressing room, but this was a better on the pitch leadership performance from him, particularly in the dying moments of this match, in multiple goal line clearances, which I think speaks to our ability to control the situation at moments. So, I mean, there's a lot of problems leading up to him having to do that. I don't want to have to see him make multiple goal line clearances in an individual game, but when you're standing up for that, almost Terry-esque in the way that he like stood up in this game a little bit.
Dan never misses a moment to gin someone up beyond reasonable expectation. That is an extraordinary thing that Dan does. Anyway, back to you, Sam.
I mean, he does that every single intro on the preview pod. He's my weekly confidence boost, so I will not let you say anything bad against him. But yeah, to be very honest, then I started off looking at it slightly in a negative way because he was again responsible for not communicating with his centre back on the Isak run. And this is the exact same thing that happened with Tosin on the right hand side for the goal that we conceded. So that's 2 games back to back where he should have been more vocal. And I pointed out that this is perhaps exactly what Enzo Maresca wants from him. Talk more. You might be at full back, but you still are the leader. And you've got the luxury of seeing Cesar Azpilicueta, who was, the leader at full back for the longest time. So this is how you need to be setting the example, which you do great, but also talk. Talk to your young centre backs, tell them where to be, tell them exactly where the runs are, and it'll be a better experience for them in terms of reading the game. So I think he erred a little bit there, but the way he picked himself up, like you mentioned, was absolutely phenomenal. When he's fit, even though we know he's not fully fit, he's just making all these interceptions again. Great new in terms of just where he needs to be, what he needs to do at every single time. There was this clip against the Liverpool game where he sent Gakpo for a hot dog on his first particular action. That's the kind of quality that you miss in those situations where other fullbacks would probably panic a little bit. He tends to be very self-assured. I think it runs in the James family, based on the two players that we have in terms of evidence, but just supremely good. I think we're yet to see the best of him in terms of leadership, in terms of setting an example. But we also forget that he's in this particular squad a senior player, but he's still very, very young. So hopefully, just maybe a year of playing consistent football gets even better at those respects, and we need him to stand up and be counted. So
I think the moment that he fully got back into this team, and the moment that I think the team rallied around him was that late header over the bar. Levi went over and picked him up and was like ginning him up, and it was one of those like these are the small dumb things that I notice in a game, but like that is a big deal for me. Reese has not been in this team consistently, like we've talked about multiple times, for the better part of 2 or 3 years now. Like they don't really know him on the pitch that well, right? Because this team's gone through such a ridiculous transformation in such a short amount of time. All the pieces have been interchanged for the most part, and he's been on the sideline trying to help from that side. And I think there were a couple of hero moments: goal line clearance early in the second half, another goal line clearance late, and then that header over the bar, where this isn't about Reese and the style and flair that he can play with, which is obvious. Like he has bags and bags of talent on the ball. This is Reese getting down and dirty and saying, I don't care if Dan Byrne has 8 inches on me in terms of height. I'm going to try and physically move him off of the ball, even if he elbows me in the face, what looked like intentionally to me. But like, that is a big deal. The team rallying around him, picking him up and going, hey, like this, you're that guy. You're that guy. I know Cole's the guy right now, but you're still that important to us, is massive. And I would guess that Enzo Maresca's comments at the kind of midweek press conference were more pointed at him in the locker room in those sorts of social situations than they are on the pitch necessarily. And every leader evolves, so I'm not worried about him in that way, Dan. But I was really pleased to see the team rally around him.
Well, the lowest rated player on the day, according to SofaScore, was Robert Sanchez with a 6.3 rating. He actually was the lowest rated player across both teams. Only Shar was at 6.4, was close to him. So, 0.35 goals prevented on the day, 50% accurate passes. He was 6 out of 25 on long ball attempts. He definitely passed into some questionable positions. And JJ asking the question, if Jorgensen keeps a clean sheet against an inferior team against Newcastle midweek, is it a good catalyst for Enzo to make potentially a change or drop Sanchez? I don't know if the class between both of those goalkeepers is close enough, Nick. I mean, I think you're in a bad position, a bad decision moment either way. You're either trusting someone who's very inexperienced at kind of the Premier League level, or you're trusting someone who is shown that on the day he can be really great from a shot stopping perspective if he is dialed in. But if he is a percent or two off, that extra 1 to 2% for him is a catastrophic drop off and results in some really questionable decision making. We don't really want him on the ball in any way, shape, or form. What's your take on this goalkeeping situation? And, is there any type of path for Jorgensen, or is there a path for Maresca to even make a change?
I don't think so. I'll be honest, because I haven't seen enough out of Jorgensen to go, hey, that's our guy now. Like, I think he's been fine, but he's also been playing against, with all respect to the UECL teams, like Panathinaikos was bad. Ghent was pretty bad. Like, these are not even close to the same caliber teams that Robert Sanchez is facing. And, I think the wild card is if Georgi Petrovic was still here, then I'm very interested in what that would look like. Because I think we saw more out of Petrovic, although he kind of faded late in last season, to say might be time. It was around this time. I think it was a little later in the season last year where we played Newcastle in the League Cup. I think it was like a round or two later, and he had that like standout performance that kind of announced his presence into the team. And then basically from that point, because Sanchez was hurt, he started. And I am worried about Sanchez, Sam, but I don't think we have an easy way out on this. I don't think there's a sub that can be made that's going to magically make everything better. I think we're going to concede shitty goals and have bad distribution from either side this year.
Yeah, I genuinely cannot argue with that point from any aspect altogether. At this point, our best hope is to pray that Mike Penders is a generational talent and ends up, being better than Courtois. But yeah, I mean,
No,
if you
no
have
pressure.
11 goalkeepers and I hope he doesn't I hope he just listened to the player preview that we did with him, and that's about it. He's not listening to the stream thinking, Jesus, what am I walking into? But yeah, I think again, if you have 11 keepers and you're still looking outside, trying to figure out who you should spend on, I generally don't know what that says about your goalkeeping scouting or just the juju that surrounds the club in terms of finding a good shot stopper. So my general idea is probably a little different. I feel like you should take those low risk gambles, spend money on the younger talents and make sure that you find the next younger guy before he hits his peak. So it just doesn't make sense for me to spend 60 million on a Mike Maignan or like 70 million on an established goalkeeper because it's a confidence game more than any other outfield position. It just varies so widely, which is why like when I speak to Dan about scouting, on these player profiles that we do, I just say I'm going to leave out goalkeepers because it's just so unpredictable. And every coach that I talk to says different things in terms of how they interpret a player's playing style. So it's a hard place to be in. Obviously, Sanchez has a lot of insiders who are making his case. Obviously, Ben Roberts there, the goalkeeping coach, and the fact that we've got him from Brighton and we have a major part of the hierarchy at the club. So maybe that's playing a part in terms of him being number one. Plus, I think in the internationals, Jorgensen had an injury where he lost vision in one eye temporarily. So maybe that was also precautionary until he played that
Yeah.
Conference League game. So who knows? Maybe we'll see him, step up and be given that opportunity. Probably just giving Sanchez a good 10 games, 15 games, and flipping the sample size to see which one performs better. But at this point, your best bet is to keep a clean defense, keep it nice and composed in midfield, and hope that your keeper doesn't have to make a save.
This is another game where we've seen a bit of a different midfield combination. We're going to be interested to see Caicedo, who continues to be just the best one of our midfielders in any way, shape, or form. There was a stat from Squawka. He made 7 interceptions, the joint most of any player in the Premier League in a game this season. He's the first Chelsea midfielder to make 7 or more interceptions in a Premier League game since who Nick Verlaney? Who?
Would that be my boy N'Golo Kante?
It would be versus Spurs in 2018.
Wow, really?
That is a
Wow.
long time since we've had a performance
Jeez.
like that. Something to celebrate and recognize. I mean, did you have any thoughts on the pairing, on how they did today? And do you like this more in kind of a 50-50 type match? I mean, this was 51% possession for us, 49% possession for Newcastle. So definitely was a little bit more back and forth, and it gave us an opportunity to see what those two could do together. And I think you're grading Newcastle to be a better side than they are from like a table perspective. So is this something that you like, you want to see more of in the Premier League, and where you think that puts Enzo?
I think it puts him on the bench. I don't, and it's, this is more about how we look with the two players that started today than it is about him. It's a more balanced, better lineup. I don't think anyone could disagree with that. I think when Enzo gets brought on at the end of the game to kind of control the ball, we kind of do that. But I don't think it's necessarily his fault that we were kind of running ragged at that point. I think it was just like the nature of the game. But there were moments in this game, Sam, where I looked at the midfield, and the midfield looked a little lost, maybe getting played over or around instead of through. And then at the start of the second half, it was like a switch flipped, and they were everywhere. They were so much more confrontational. They were winning balls in Newcastle's defensive half. They were progressing the ball much better. Lavia looked a lot more dangerous. And I want to see that version of this midfield, the combative shithouse midfield that goes after everything a lot more. I think Caicedo has shown regularly that he's capable. I think when Lavia does it, it becomes a whole different beast in midfield.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're looking for, aren't we? We're looking for the ideal foil for Moises Caicedo. And again, it's just about trying to figure out how you can make that midfield rock solid. And again, we started off just like Reece James in a moment of introspection on that goal. Both of them decided to go for the same player, and there was an easy sort of opportunity for Newcastle to run at the back line. Fofana was caught in between, trying to step up and then go back, and we concede the goal. So, barring that, like you mentioned, when the possession flipped from going through control to again in a completely different game state. I feel like everybody stepped up. I will also have to watch the game back because I'm pretty sure I missed a couple of details. For example, Newcastle shifted their man marking in the second half, so they knew Burn was getting roasted and deep fried by Nico. So they essentially tried to put Bruno there, and also sort of made sure that Shah was also pushing up from the back line
Mm-hmm.
on him. And because of that double shifting around of stuff, I guess Newcastle's midfield were a lot more preoccupied with where our midfielders were moving. So maybe that contributed a little, but um, that's what I want to see from Lavia. I think that's the question mark that I've always had when we signed him. I have no doubts whatsoever in terms of his quality on the ball. It's just without it, how good are you? And it's the same question with Kani Chukwemeka, with Enzo Fernandez, and the best quote that I know that the way to define it is just wizards with the ball and muggles without it. So, how good can you be in terms of those like Jose Mourinho saying in the documentary, you have to be bastards. You absolutely have to be brutal without the ball, and that's what we need the most next to Caicedo, who is a wizard with the ball and one without it.
Yeah.
And lots of praise there. I mean, I think we're looking at just a couple of interesting stats, Nick, on just so we scored 75 seconds in the second half, the earliest goal Newcastle had conceded in the second half of a Premier League game since January 2016. That's a fun stat. Cole Palmer with 7 goals and Nico Jackson with 6 goals. It's the first time Chelsea have had 2 players score 6 or more goals across the opening 9 games of a Premier League season. That's a very, very kind of positive stat line there. I mean, generally, I think this kind of bodes well for, you talked about that upcoming run of fixtures, and we don't have the Maresca comments out there yet. I did want to kind of say it is a bad time to be someone who had receipts on Nico Jackson. I feel like it is a really bad time to have said that he is not maybe the caliber of striker that Chelsea need. I mean, he is developing well. He's putting himself into good positions. He was up to a certain point, really maintaining a good discipline record, but we have some questions about that still.
Yeah.
But just the runs he was making, the way that he was absorbing attention, the way that he's kind of continuing to be involved, I think it's really, really exciting to think about where he could be at the end of this season, particularly with how good he seems to communicate telepathically with Cole Palmer. Like the way that they play together is exceptional. And I mean, you could draw a comparison to former players, a former duo if you wanted. I'm not going to say it because I get in trouble when I do.
Why don't we take a quick timeout on that, Dan?
Why
don't we just let's hold that? You can always use it, but you can't, first impressions and all.
You can't unsay it, apparently,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. That's basically where I'm at. Look, 5th fastest player to reach 20 goals in the Premier League for Chelsea. I don't know. Is that good? Is the fact that he already has more goals in the Premier League than Kai Havertz, who played approximately 3.5 more seasons than him, good? Are you interested in any of these stats, folks? Like, I don't know. And to me, Sam, it's not just, okay, cool, he's starting to convert at a higher level, and that obviously needs to happen for us to reach, I think the targets that Chelsea has set for this season. But for me, the back to goal play, receiving the ball with tons of pressure, turning out of it, making smart runs down the channels to take pressure off of Cole Palmer so that he can occupy space, passes out wide and resetting the ball, being able to find himself in the right positions. Like, he is playing, to me, some elite off the ball striker right now. Like, I am super, super pumped about what I'm seeing there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, apologies because I'm also keeping one eye on our title rivals, Arsenal and Liverpool, playing out a game. So that's going to be
Underline
an interesting
title
one.
rivals for Nick Verlaney. Just underline that one there.
Stop
Why
it.
not?
Stop
Why
it.
not?
He
Stop it,
he
man.
he
Stop.
cannot handle this much optimism on one stream. It's just like,
Too
his
much.
pragmatic self
It's
keeping.
too much. Can't do it.
Look, I'm going to give you the
No,
choice.
but
You've
just
got
to
two
give you,
doors. You could take more Sanchez conversation, or you could take me with a little why not chant going. Your call.
Go
Dan
ahead.
is genuinely the clickbait headline, right? Like, he's the clickbait headline. The next Drogba Lampard duo in the Premier League. I'm like, chill, bro. It's been like
I didn't
a
say it.
season and a
I
half,
didn't
but
say it. Sam said it. CFC Central saying we
never
might
still.
have the next Drogba Lampard duo and Cole
Stop.
Palmer and Nico Jackson.
Yeah,
I don't know.
you two together are too much. Everyone, it's like we balance each other out when either one of us is on. You guys together are this joy ball that cannot be stopped. It's the avalanche going down the mountain. Sam, speak about Nico and give us your extra stat that you wanted to talk about, please.
Yeah, it was related to Nico Jackson because now he has one less goal this season than Manchester United as a club. So that sort of tells you where we are, and hopefully he'll equal that tally when we face them in the next game. But what can you say about him? I think he's exceptional. I'm going to guiltily confess that I was looking for a low hanging fruit, thinking how quickly has he reached that goal mark this season, and turns out like he reached 6 or 7 goals around the same time last season as well. It was the hat trick against Tottenham that got him there in the beginning of November. So he's basically on track. It's just his efficiency seems a lot more refined, and his goals seem to be a lot more spread out. He's definitely counting or making it count in every single game rather than scoring in spells, which I think all of us had like a question mark with saying, can you count and then sort of like make it happen in every game? And he's popped up in the big games now. He's shown against Liverpool he can do it. He's shown against Newcastle that he's there to be, make a difference. So I'm supremely happy. I think he's definitely somebody who I will continue to maintain is a top 3 under 23 forward in the world. There is absolutely no question in my mind. If you gave me an option between Benjamin Sheshko, him, any of the under 23 strikers in Europe, I pick him every single day because he just offers the kind of fundamentals that nobody else in that striking roster does. He spins a man better than anybody I've seen recently at center forward. No center back wants to be, against him because there's a combination of speed, power, guile, and he adds finishing to it, then it's game over for everybody. And you've already got, luckily a player who's got a great relationship with him. They sense to sort of play off each other. They've, I think, now combined for 21 goals in the last 9 games, which is extraordinary. I mean, that's just an incredible
Wow.
amount. Yeah. Consider this: we scored like our top scorer was 7 goals, Jorginho and Kai Havertz at one point in time in our
Wow.
recent memory. This is where we are now. Yeah, this is
Uh,
this is how it feels. So
Here's
yeah, I
the
mean, I pulled up a number. Yeah, go on that.
Well, I was gonna say this is the number that I think seals the case for Nick's. Why Nick is so excited about Nico Jackson. I mean, he talks about shots on target. He loves players being clinical. So before this game, since FBref hasn't updated, I mean, he did only take one shot with one goal. So like its actually number is going to be higher. But, you know, he had the 5 goals off of 21 shots, 11 shots on target. So he was hitting at 52.4%. Last season, across the entirety of it, 45.5. And actually that half season at Villarreal, 49.1. So you're talking about development, you're talking about getting better, you're talking about being more clinical, being more kind of selective in your shots and making sure you're kind of putting it in the right position to convert. Like he's doing everything that you need.
That's an important point to me, is the selection of the shots. Like obviously the goal today is pretty obvious. You're going to shoot and score in that situation, right? But last year, I think he was forcing it too much. He was taking shots that had no chance of going. He was obviously fluffing some chances where, you know, he should have scored and didn't. But I think what I've seen this season, Sam, what I'm excited about is you can tell that there's a clear intent, and that if there is not the right opportunity, that he is then more often than not perfect, but more often than not making the right pass to free up somebody else, because, you know, the center backs are so focused on him. It's a marked improvement season over season for me.
Yeah, and we talked about this in the goalkeeping sort of metrics as well. It's such a fluid, volatile entity. And I would like to sort of throw the argument to everybody who was saying Nico Jackson is not it. Bring Alexander Isak, bring Victor Osimhen. One is playing in Turkey, the other scored 1 in 500 minutes. That is how quickly life comes at you when you're a center forward. So obviously us being Charity FC gifted him a second goal in the Premier League.
Of
Ideally,
course.
yeah, I mean, his XG, Nick, I think Newcastle managed 1.88, and everybody's saying, oh, they had more XG than us. His XG for the goal was 0.98. It was
Okay.
impossible to miss.
Only
So genuinely, he had.
Timo Werner could miss a chance that easy, you know.
So I mean, he was essentially all of the XG there. But like you mentioned, we saw that purple streak. I wouldn't even say purple. That was a gold streak at Villarreal. It was just an incredible run of finishing that he managed there. And that was the hope. Can you replicate anything close to it in terms of your efficiency numbers? And we're seeing, I think, a fraction of it. And the rewards are there. I think it gets even better. Obviously, you want him to have maybe 30, 35 games where he's had enough time to get used to the Premier League, to get that anxiety out of his system. And he looks a lot more assured in his decisions. I just think he needs to improve his left foot a little bit, in the way that he separates, in the way that he shoots. I think the variety also needs to be there, but he's got the entire Premier League ahead of him. He's got like at least a decade at the top level. So hopefully that refinement will be, an ongoing dynamic process.
And lead Chelsea to much, in terms of the way of silverware too, because if he continues at this pace, there has to be some in our future. Enzo Maresca's comments have started to come out from the post-match press conference. I want to go through a couple of those here.
Nice.
He kind of talked about how it was a very different type of game compared to the rest. We know how strong they are and how good they are. We had some good movement on the ball, very happy overall. He also talked about the fact that in terms of areas of concern for Chelsea, I'm always concerned we can attack better, we can defend better. Agree. We started 3 months ago, so I'm very happy with where we are now. The very important thing is this good feeling. And then, he talked about this, that the players very understanding every day of what we're working for. The fans can enjoy and dream. Us as a club and the players, we need to understand there are many things that we can do better. So again, finding a way to talk about, I think the goodness that Chelsea are finding, but not also overselling it. Not as optimistic as Sam or I, a little bit more in the Nick Verlaney realistic camp. But I mean, I think with a match against Newcastle coming up in the midweek, a match against Man United at the in the weekend here, there is plenty to be excited about for this Chelsea team in the moment. And I mean, we're happy to have everybody join us here in the live stream to do it, or listening back on the podcast here. But we had Sam here, we had Nick here, we had a wonderful group of Chelsea supporters join us in this live stream. Thanks for doing that. Subscribe if you haven't before. Like, comment. We always appreciate that here. But that's good for this one. We'll be back with more Chelsea content on the channel. We've got some women-specific content coming up. We've got plenty more in terms of journalist conversation. And then we're going to have more in the way of match previews and reviews. But that's going to do it for this one. So until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.